Welcome to this deep dive
Oh,
into Second Thessalonians 3.1:18.
right.
It's like having a personal tutor guiding us through these verses.
Yeah,
And I'm really excited to get into this
me too.
because, it's a letter from Paul. It's pretty dense. There's a lot packed into these verses, and I think it's going to be a really insightful journey.
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot about the early church and what it was like.
Yeah, so just to give everyone a little bit of a roadmap,
Sure.
before we jump into the content, Paul has a lot of requests in these verses.
Hmm.
He has some warnings, and then he has kind of like this closing section.
Yeah,
And we're going to kind of try to break that down as we go through this deep dive
this
today.
is good.
And I think what makes this passage so fascinating
Yeah,
is that it
Mm.
gives us this really unique glimpse into the early church.
it does.
And specifically, it looks at the challenges of living out your faith
Right.
in a world that wasn't always friendly to that idea.
It wasn't friendly at all.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right in.
Right.
The passage opens with Paul asking the Thessalonians for prayers,
Okay.
and he's very specific about what he wants them to pray for.
Hmm.
He says, "Pray for us that the word of the Lord may speed ahead and be honored, as happened among you,
Okay.
and that we may be delivered from wicked and evil men."
Right.
Pretty intense, huh?
That is intense. It's like a glimpse into what their lives were like,
It is.
the dangers and anxieties they faced on a daily basis.
Exactly. And, it makes you wonder what was going on back then that
Yeah.
led Paul to write about these things.
Right.
We know from history that spreading the gospel wasn't a walk in the park.
No.
They faced a lot of opposition, not just disagreements,
Right.
but sometimes like real hostility and danger.
Absolutely. And Paul was often seen as a threat to the established order,
Yeah.
both religiously and politically.
Mhm.
And their message, it challenged those existing power structures
Absolutely.
that often led to persecution.
Wow. That puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about spreading a religious message.
Right.
It was a risky endeavor
It
with
was.
some very real consequences.
Absolutely.
No wonder prayer was so important to them.
It was essential.
Right.
Prayer wasn't just a ritual or a Sunday morning activity.
Yeah.
It was woven into the fabric of their daily lives,
Hmm.
a source of strength,
Yeah.
guidance in the midst of very real danger.
Absolutely. And I think there's something we can learn from that today.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
Even if the specific threats we face are different.
of course.
We might not face persecution for our beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
but we all experience challenges in our lives.
Definitely.
Times when we need support
Yes.
and a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah. That need for encouragement,
Yeah.
for community, a
Yeah.
source of hope, those are timeless
Absolutely.
human needs.
Yes. And I think that brings us to
Yeah.
kind of another interesting aspect of this passage, which is Paul's focus on work ethic.
Okay. Yeah.
He does not shy away from those tough topics.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Right? Like it seems a little jarring to go straight from asking for prayers
Yeah.
to, if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat.
Yeah. Very blunt.
Right.
Yes.
And it makes you stop and think, like, would that approach work today?
It's definitely thought-provoking.
It is.
But to understand this statement,
Sure.
we need to look at what was happening in the Thessalonian community.
Okay.
Paul was addressing a specific issue. Okay. Some people were choosing to be idle and rely on the generosity of others.
So it's not about condemning anyone
Right.
who's struggling or unable to work.
No, not at all.
It's about addressing this problem
Yes.
within the community.
Exactly.
Wow.
And these individuals, they were often referred to as busybodies.
Okay.
Were disrupting the community's harmony in a couple of ways.
Okay.
They weren't just being lazy, they were meddling in other people's affairs.
Okay, so the term busybodies has like a deeper meaning here.
It does.
Yeah.
It's not just about being nosy.
Yeah.
It's about actively causing trouble,
Yeah.
disrupting the community's peace.
Okay, so
And remember,
yeah.
these early Christian communities, they were often quite small and
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Mhm.
So having people who weren't contributing
Yeah.
and were instead creating conflict could jeopardize the entire group's well-being.
It's like if you're all in a lifeboat together
Yes.
and everyone needs to row to reach safety,
Right.
and you have one person who's refusing to paddle and instead is rocking the boat.
Exactly. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Paul was basically saying, look, if you're able-bodied capable of working,
Yeah.
you need to step up,
Mhm.
contribute, not be a burden on others.
So it's about sharing responsibility
Yes.
and taking care of each other,
Absolutely.
not taking advantage of other people's kindness.
Right.
And, it wasn't just...
It wasn't just some arbitrary rule that Paul came up with.
Okay.
His emphasis on work was deeply rooted in his understanding of faith.
Yeah, he wasn't just talking the talk.
No.
He was walking the walk.
He was living it.
Like, actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
And our faith should be reflected in how we live our lives.
Yes.
Not just what we say we believe.
Precisely. And that's a powerful message that still resonates today.
It does.
It's a call to align our actions with our values.
Yes.
To be people of integrity who contribute to the world around us.
So it's not just an ancient lesson about work ethic.
Right.
It's about personal responsibility.
Yes.
The importance of community.
Absolutely.
And how our actions really can speak volumes about our character.
It's true this passage is full of layers, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
We've just scratched the surface.
We have.
And I'm curious to hear more about Paul's approach to dealing with conflict within the community.
Yeah.
He seems to offer this balance between holding people accountable
Yes.
and offering compassion.
He does.
So how does he manage to do both?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll explore as we continue our deep dive today.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm ready for part 2.
Me too. It's interesting, when you read these letters, you think about the early church as this perfect, harmonious community.
Yeah.
But as we've seen, they definitely had their challenges, just like any group of people.
Yeah, it's almost comforting in a way.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even in those early days, people were still people.
Exactly.
With all their complexities and flaws.
And that's what makes Paul's guidance so valuable.
Yeah.
He wasn't writing for some idealized, flawless group.
Right.
He was offering practical advice for real people, trying to navigate real life.
Exactly. So let's dive into that advice.
Okay.
So when we left off, we were talking about Paul's instructions on how to deal with those who are causing problems in the community.
Yeah.
He says, "Now we command you, brothers, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you keep away from any brother who is walking in a disorderly manner, not in accord with the tradition that you received from us."
Yeah.
Sounds pretty strong.
It does. It does have that kind of firmness to it. But, remember, this instruction comes right after his call for prayer and his discussion of work ethic.
Yeah.
It's all part of a larger tapestry of how to live faithfully and build a strong community.
So it's not just about punishing people or kicking them out of the group.
No.
It's about setting boundaries and protecting the community's health and well-being.
Exactly. And think about the historical context here.
Yeah.
Imagine you're part of this small group of believers facing opposition, maybe even persecution from the outside world.
You'd need to be able to rely on each other.
Absolutely.
Right. Know that everyone was pulling their weight.
You need that unity, that sense of shared purpose.
Committed to that community's survival.
Exactly. And that's why Paul was so concerned about these individuals who were causing division and disrupting the community's unity.
Right. It's like a house with cracks in its foundation.
Yes.
From the outside, it might look fine.
Right.
But those cracks can weaken the entire structure over time.
Absolutely. And in those early days, the church was still very fragile.
Right.
It needed to be protected from both external threats and these internal divisions.
So it makes Paul's instructions seem less harsh.
Right.
And more like a necessary measure to safeguard the community.
Yes. It wasn't about being mean-spirited.
Right.
It was about survival.
And I think it's important to emphasize that Paul wasn't advocating for complete isolation or shunning of these individuals. He goes on to say, if anyone does not obey what we say in this letter, take note of that person and have nothing to do with him, that he may be ashamed. Do not regard him as an enemy, but warn him as a brother.
Right. So there's nuance here.
There is.
It's about holding people accountable.
Okay.
But doing it in a way that aims for restoration.
Right.
Not rejection.
It's not about writing people off or condemning them.
It's about encouraging them to change their behavior.
It's like saying, we care about you. We want you to be a part of this community.
Yeah.
But you need to take responsibility for your actions and contribute in a positive way.
And notice how Paul emphasizes that they should still be warned as brothers.
Yes.
There's an element of compassion there.
Yeah.
Recognizing these individuals are still part of the community.
Right.
Even if they're struggling.
It's a reminder That even when we need to set boundaries.
Yes.
Or address difficult behavior.
Yeah.
We can still do it with a spirit of love and concern.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between firmness and grace.
Yeah.
Accountability and compassion.
Not always easy.
It's not. It requires wisdom.
Yeah.
Discernment.
Yes.
And a willingness to see the humanity in those who are causing us frustration.
And that's a lesson that's still so relevant today, right?
Absolutely.
We all encounter difficult people in our lives.
We do.
Whether it's at work, in our families, or in our communities.
And Paul's approach offers a model for how to navigate those challenges.
It does.
In a way that preserves a relationship.
Yeah.
And seeks restoration whenever possible.
It's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
Right.
But about approaching it in a way that is constructive.
Yes.
And ultimately aims for healing and growth.
It's like tough love.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Holding people accountable, but doing it with love and a desire to see them thrive.
It makes me think about those situations where we might be tempted to gossip about someone.
Behind their back?
Or write them off completely.
Oh, write them off completely, yeah.
Paul challenges us to take a more proactive and compassionate stance.
It encourages us to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Speak truth in love. Offer support and guidance.
Even when it's challenging.
Yeah.
It's recognizing we're all in this together.
We are.
With our imperfections and our struggles.
And sometimes the best way to help someone is to gently nudge them back on the right path.
Right.
Even if it means having to have a tough conversation.
Yeah.
Or setting some boundaries.
And those conversations aren't always easy.
They're not.
They require courage.
Yeah.
Humility.
And vulnerability.
Yes.
It's so much easier to avoid the conflict altogether.
It is.
But as we've seen from Paul's instructions, sometimes that avoidance can actually be more harmful.
It can.
In the long run.
Yeah, it's like allowing a small leak in a boat to go unaddressed.
Okay.
It might seem insignificant at first.
Yeah.
But over time, it can sink the entire ship.
So it's really about recognizing that addressing issues head on, even when it's uncomfortable, can be the most loving and compassionate thing we can do for ourselves.
And for our community.
For our communities, exactly.
It's about recognizing that conflict, when approached constructively, can actually be an opportunity for growth and transformation.
It's about turning those cracks in the foundation into opportunities to build something stronger, more resilient.
And speaking of strength and resilience, there's one more aspect of this passage I want to highlight.
Okay.
Paul's personal touch.
You're talking about that handwritten salutation again.
I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you think he felt it was so important to mention that?
Well, remember, this was a time long before email signatures or digital verification. Forgery was a real concern. And a handwritten message was a way to guarantee authenticity. So it was like a personal seal.
Exactly.
Assuring the Thessalonians this message was genuinely from Paul.
Yes.
Not some imposter.
Right. But it's more than just a security measure.
Okay.
It also adds a layer of personal warmth.
Yeah.
And connection to what could otherwise seem like a rather stern message.
Right. It's like he's saying, look, I might be giving you some tough instructions here, but I want you to know that I care about you deeply.
Exactly.
This isn't just a formal decree from some distant authority figure.
Yeah.
This is me, Paul, speaking to you from the heart.
And I think that's a beautiful reminder for us today.
It is.
Especially in a world where communication can often feel impersonal.
So impersonal.
Or transactional.
Yes, it's about taking the time to connect on a human level.
It is.
Let people know that we see them, we hear them, and we care about their well-being.
It's about infusing our interactions with authenticity.
Yes.
Compassion.
Yeah.
A genuine desire to build meaningful relationships.
And sometimes it's about adding that personal touch.
Right.
Something that makes the other person feel seen and valued.
Absolutely. It could be as simple as a handwritten note.
Yeah.
A thoughtful gift.
Yeah.
Or just taking the time to truly listen.
Yeah.
And engage with someone on a heart level.
And those little gestures can go a long way.
They can.
You know, in building trust, fostering connection, and creating a sense of belonging.
Absolutely.
Even in the midst of difficult conversations or challenging circumstances.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Right.
We've explored the historical context,
Yes.
the importance of community, that nuanced approach to dealing with conflict.
Yeah.
And the power of personal touch.
It's amazing how much wisdom and insight we can glean.
It is.
From this short passage.
Just this one little section.
It is.
Of Paul's letter.
Like we've unearthed a treasure trove.
We have.
Of practical advice and timeless principles.
Yes.
That are just as relevant today.
Absolutely.
As they were centuries ago.
And there's still so much more to explore.
There is.
As we move into the final part.
Right.
Of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll delve into some of the broader implications of these teachings.
Yeah.
And how they can inform our lives today.
I'm eager to hear your thoughts on that.
Right.
How this passage connects to our modern experiences.
Yeah, it's amazing how these ancient words can still speak to us.
They do.
So powerfully across the centuries.
You know, it's amazing how this letter to the Thessalonians, written almost 2,000 years ago, still feels so relevant today.
It really does speak to the enduring power of these principles, doesn't it?
It does.
The specific situations might be different.
Right.
But the core challenges of building community, dealing with conflict, living a life of integrity, those are timeless.
They are timeless.
Yeah.
And like, you know, think about that whole discussion around work ethic.
Yeah.
Paul's message wasn't just about earning a paycheck.
No, it was about contributing to the common good.
Yes.
Using our abilities to make a positive impact.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all part of something larger than ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that our actions have consequences.
They do.
That ripple outwards.
Yeah.
Paul understood that a healthy community is built on this foundation of
shared responsibility.
Yeah. Where everyone contributes.
To the best of their ability.
To the best of their ability, exactly.
Yeah, and that idea of shared responsibility connects to so many aspects of modern life, doesn't it?
It does.
Think about how we grapple with questions of social welfare, individual initiative, the role of government.
Right.
Are we our brother's keeper?
It's a big question.
How do we balance individual freedom with that sense of collective obligation?
These are complex questions.
They are.
And there are no easy answers.
No.
But I think Paul's letter offers us this valuable framework for thinking about these issues.
It does.
And it's not about rigid rules or simplistic solutions.
It's about approaching these challenges with wisdom, compassion, a commitment to both individual flourishing and the common good.
It's like trying to find that sweet spot between offering support and encouraging self-reliance.
It is, yeah. You want to create a safety net for those who are struggling, but also empower individuals to reach their full potential.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
And I think it's a reminder that building a strong community is an ongoing process.
Yes.
Not a destination.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. It requires constant effort, communication.
And a willingness to learn and grow together.
Yeah, exactly. And it requires courage.
It does. Paul didn't shy away from addressing difficult issues head on.
He did not.
Even when it meant having uncomfortable conversations or challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to call out behaviors that were harmful.
Right.
Even when those behaviors were coming from people he cared about.
Exactly.
He understood that sometimes true love requires speaking truth.
It does.
Even when it's difficult.
And doing it with a spirit of grace.
Yes.
Aiming for restoration.
Yeah, not punishment.
Not punishment, exactly.
It's about seeking reconciliation.
Yeah.
Helping people become the best versions of themselves.
And that's where that personal touch comes in.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Even when he was addressing these difficult issues, Paul didn't lose sight of the importance of human connection.
He didn't.
He signed that letter in his own hand, adding that warmth and authenticity to his message.
It's like he was saying, I'm not just sending you a list of rules. This is me, Paul, your brother in Christ, reaching out to you with love and concern.
What would it look like if we approached our interactions with that same blend of firmness?
Compassion and personal touch.
It makes you think.
What kind of impact could we have on our families, our workplaces, our communities?
Right. It's inspiring to think about.
It is.
Imagine a world where we tackled challenges head on. Spoke truth with grace.
And never lost sight of that inherent dignity
Yes.
and worth of every individual.
It might not always be easy.
No.
But it would certainly be a world worth striving for.
It would.
A world where we truly lived out those words from Galatians 6:2.
Yes.
Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ.
Beautiful.
And on that note,
Yeah.
I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
We have.
Into 2 Thessalonians 3:1-18.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
Full of insights and challenges.
It has been. I couldn't agree more.
Good.
It's amazing how these ancient words can still speak to us so powerfully.
I know, across the century.
Offering guidance.
Yeah.
And inspiration.
Yes.
And it's a reminder that the journey of faith and understanding is never truly over.
It's not.
There's always more to discover, more to learn,
Always.
more to apply to our lives.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you found it enriching.
And thought-provoking.
Until
next time.
Yes.
You continue to seek wisdom, embrace compassion, and live a life that reflects the love and grace we've received.
Beautifully said.